Welcome to a Legalbytes presentation of the Alec Baldwin trial. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel we make sense of the law one bite at a time. If you want more on the background of the Alec Baldwin case, check out our video on it, linked in the description below. But otherwise, you be the jury. Is Alec Baldwin responsible for the death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins as the man handling the revolver that killed her? Or is he being unfairly targeted as an actor who actually shouldn't be expected to be in charge of firearm safety? Tell us what you think. But in the process, the one rule is don't be a dingus. Remember, everyone comes from their own perspective and opinion, and everyone comes to conclusions at their own pace. Agree or disagree, but always respectfully. Okay, let's get into it. All right. I realized at the last second that I forgot to turn on the camera again for the stream. So, alrighty. Okay. We had a nice long break. Jury had a nice long break. And the reason why the jury had a nice long break is because the attorneys were in a hearing over some evidentiary issues, what was going to be let in, how much of it. There's going to be some statements by Baldwin that are apparently going to be brought in, but maybe with some limitations and whatnot. So we will be seeing all of that. I considered maybe starting up the live stream a little bit early for it. And then I decided to give myself a little bit of a break. I hope you guys are okay with that. But it's all on Court TV and Law and Crime as well. So if you guys do want to catch the actual hearing itself, the back and forth and all of that, you can definitely check that out for sure. All right. Questions in the chat. As always, I will be saving those and pausing to answer them. We are going to be continuing here with more cross-examination of Miss Marissa Poppell, the crime scene technician from Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department. And yeah, but before we do that, really quick, there are a couple more members here that have joined while waiting. And so let's see, Desiree B became a YouTube member. Welcome to Bike Club. Very happy to have you here. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Awesome. Super awesome. And let's see here. Doozy is 0201 also became a YouTube member. Welcome to Bike Club. Very happy to have you here. Thank you for supporting the channel. And if anybody, of course, the number one way to support the channel is to hit the like button, because it does help to push the streams out so the more people come and see them. But if you are really enjoying it and you want to know how to best monetarily support the channel, becoming a YouTube member or becoming a supporter on Patreon, both of them will give you access to Bike Club. Those are really the best ways over the long term to support the channel so that we can continue to put a lot of resources into the channel. But yeah, of course, number one way, if you are not in a position to join Bike Club and on either platform on any level, liking the stream, subscribing to the channel, all of that stuff is super, super helpful. Okay. And Wings, thanks so much for the super chat. I don't know which bothers me more, the terrible blandness of Lally or the obnoxious attitude of KM. Is it frowned upon for the judge to slap attorneys? It is definitely frowned upon. That would be battery. So yes. Okay. All right. Let's see here now, and let's do it. Let's get to it, shall we?
All right, you may be seated. Go ahead. Mr. Spiro.
Good afternoon.
Sorry. It would help if I pulled it on the screen, wouldn't it? Okay, here we go.
You had seen when you were testifying earlier Mr. Baldwin in court today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the first time that you've seen him since, I believe, since the day that the incident occurred?
Correct.
And of course, you see him here as a defendant in a courtroom wearing a suit jacket. He wasn't dressed like that on the scene, right?
Right.
He was Harlan Rust, and he had his actor costume on, right?
Yes, he
And
was.
you actually took those clothes and tested them for blood, like you said before, right?
I did.
And he was shaking as you did that, was he not?
He seemed upset as I did that.
And of course, you remember that, right?
Yes,
And the lapel that you've reviewed has refreshed your memory.
correct.
And you know that he received a phone call from his friend Joel, the director who had been shot, and you used that information to then send officers to the hospital to retrieve the bullet, correct?
I believe we already had deputies at the hospital at that time.
But he told
And by the way, this was like a minute ago when he did this, but the defense attorney, Spyro, he referred to Alec Baldwin as Harlan Rust. This is definitely intentional, definitely very intentional, because it's, he's referring to the magic of movie making, this being a different world, being on set, and the actor being a different person, having different responsibilities, this not being the real world. That was very intentional, by the way.
told you that and told you that that would be something that he wanted you to do, right?
He indicated it was something he wanted law enforcement to do, but we were already making the necessary, we were already sending a deputy to the hospital to retrieve that.
And he told you that he pulled the gun out, he turned, and he just cocked the gun, right?
He did state that, yes.
He didn't say he pulled the trigger, right?
I don't recall him saying that.
And you never tested the hammer of that gun for DNA, did you?
I do not know the FBI lab's process for processing a firearm for DNA.
But because he told you that, and I'm putting up A10, defense exhibit, that's why you knew that the document that had fallen near Miss Hutchins that says macro on hammer as thumb cocks it was so important. Isn't that right?
There was a paper inside of the church that indicated a firearm was being used, so I photographed it. We had paperwork that was later collected out of Miss Hutchins's side bag that was also additional script. And that was collected because it was part of her bag, part of her personal property.
And
So I will say this right here is one of the more impactful parts of this cross-examination. Unfortunately, it's kind of getting lost in the sauce a little bit because he's just taking a long time going through everything. But this right here is probably one of the points that is most helpful to Baldwin's case right now with this witness, which is this document that is talking about instructions that he is following for this particular scene, or for the scene blocking, talking about him pulling out the firearm, cocking the hammer, and following the instructions that are laid out in front of him. Number one, it goes against what the prosecution is saying, which is, one of their themes of their opening statement was Alec Baldwin is going to do what Alec Baldwin is going to do. And like screw anyone that gives him any kind of instructions. Meanwhile, this is evidence of him following instructions. Or at least that's what the defense wants the jury to conclude. Now, at the same time, it also shows that he's not being negligent if he's following the instructions that are literally written out for him. And this is a fair point. MYH10, it's also irrelevant. What is written on a piece of paper may not be what happened. And in fact, in this case, there's a mountain of evidence that that's not what happened. Fair, but that's going to be for the jury to determine. I wouldn't say it's irrelevant though. That doesn't necessarily mean it's irrelevant, even if it's disproven or it's called into question by other evidence. That doesn't mean it's irrelevant. It is highly relevant. But the jury is going to weigh all of the evidence at some point. But the point is that this is the defense making some points here on this cross-examination.
you see the name Helena on top, right?
Yes, this is what was taken out of her bag.
And what was at the floor, A3, Russ Colt cocked quietly now. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And you and your fellow officers discussed this and said, this is important. It confirms what he told us, didn't you?
I believe that I stated it was important because it was a script that involved a firearm inside the church where a shooting had occurred.
And after this point in time, eventually, you all sent that firearm off, not to have the firearm tested, its hammer for DNA, but rather for it to end up being destroyed in the testing, or broken in the testing, if you prefer.
The firearm was sent for DNA, and additional testing was not conducted until later.
We were talking also, to move away from the firearm for a second, about how the lethal round got on set, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Baldwin, you actually told him that you would figure it out. You gave him that assurance. You said, I get it. I know that there was a live round, wasn't supposed to be on set. We law enforcement are going to find that out, didn't you?
I believe the words that I used was, that's why we're here. We're here to try and figure out what happened.
And one of your fellow officers sort of came over the top of you and sort of confirmed to him, don't worry, we're going to find out.
Objection to whatever a fellow officer.
Effect on listener? What? One word, but objection, yes, what is it?
Objection, hearsay, the officer isn't here, who is speaking up?
Respond.
She literally said one
It's
word.
not for the truth of the matter asserted, but that it was heard.
Okay. Well, did you lay the foundation for that? Did you ask her what she did because of that?
Not yet, but I can.
Okay.
And after you,
Foundation for effect on listener?
after what you said and what you heard from your fellow officer, it is true, as you testified previously, that you did go out to seek the source of that lethal round, right?
Please rephrase your question as to the word seek.
Sure. After you said what you said and the officer said what he said, is it not the case that you made it a priority to try to find the source of the lethal ammunition, correct?
Our priority was to find the facts of what had happened in this situation.
And one of the steps that you took that we talked about, by searching the truck, by going to Seth Kenny, by getting the PDQ, one of the things you then did was you did seek out and try to find the source of the lethal ammunition, correct?
Yes.
And as you were doing that, you continued to work with Corporal Hancock, right?
Yes.
You would see her and the prosecutors often, right?
I would see Corporal Hancock more often.
And you testified previously about the search for the lethal ammunition at the trial of the armorer, correct?
Yes.
And a question came up at that trial of this issue of, did Seth Kenny really provide the ammunition to set or not, right?
Yes, I believe that came up.
Okay. And eventually there was a verdict in that case, right?
Yes.
And a good Samaritan walked into the police station and gave you the lethal ammunition, didn't they?
After the Hannah Gutierrez trial, there was an individual that came to the police station and stated they had ammunition.
And they turned in the ammunition
Yes.
and they gave it to you, right?
Yes.
And they told you that this was the ammunition that ended up with Seth Kenny that killed Miss Hutchins, right?
I do not recall all of their statements.
Who did you tell about that?
During that conversation, my Lieutenant Brian Brandel, was with me, and Detective Hancock was aware of that individual, that he had come to the sheriff's office.
And you never vouchered that and turned it over to the defense, did you?
It was a doc information situation.
I don't know what that means. Can you just explain it to me?
Meaning that I was instructed by my lieutenant to create a doc info report on it.
And I mean, what does that mean?
Means we're documenting information that this individual came and gave this ammunition to us.
Okay, but you didn't, I mean, he told you it had to do with the Rush shooting, correct?
Yes,
And he told you actually that he was a police officer in a neighboring county, right?
I believe he said he was a retired police officer, yes.
And he told you all had been duped by Seth Kenny, didn't he?
No,
In words and substance, didn't he?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. And he said to you, I'm willing to fill out a witness statement, right?
No, I don't recall that.
He told you that the rounds came from a green ammo can, didn't he?
Judge, I have to object to your saying.
Sustained.
Yeah.
Did you take the rounds that were provided to you? By the way, they were Starline brass, nickel primer, live, weren't they?
I don't recall.
You don't recall? Really?
That is what I said.
Well, it's information acted upon is going to be my response. But he told you the reason that he was coming in is because he didn't trust law enforcement on this case.
Well, you know what? She's going to object to hearsay, and you're going to say effect on listener.
Okay.
Well, you're going to have to lay your foundation better. You
Yeah.
are.
So, let me ask this question. How come law enforcement didn't voucher this with the rest of the evidence in the Rust case?
I'm not sure what you mean by the word voucher.
How come you didn't inventory it and put it with all the rest of the evidence in the Rust case?
I was instructed to put this in as a doc information case, which I did, and it is under that case number.
You buried it.
No,
Your lieutenant?
there is a supplemental report on it, and that was placed into evidence.
Did you ever turn that over to the defense?
I have not turned over anything to the defense. My information goes through the sheriff's office.
Are you aware of whether the sheriff's office ever informed the defense that a good Samaritan came in and turned in his ammunition?
I do not know.
When the defense came to view the Starline brass, nickel primer, live ammunition with you, you didn't show them this, did you?
I did not have an evidence viewing with the defense. That was my coworker.
Your coworker didn't show this to the defense, correct?
I do not know.
Do you have any reason to believe your coworker showed this to the defense, given that it wasn't put in the same inventory as the Rust case?
No.
This is interesting.
Did you or anyone from the sheriff's office?
This is a very important piece right here. If somebody came in and brought in very important information and evidence, and then also said, you guys are being duped by Seth Kenny, and then they just basically disregarded it and buried it and then didn't provide any of that evidence to Alec Baldwin, there's a potential here for a Brady violation based on this testimony. Brady violation meaning that the prosecution, the state, is supposed to hand over any evidence that would be exculpatory to the defense. They can't bury it. They can't hide it. They can't just get rid of it. This is something that has to be provided to the defense. So if that's what happened here, and she's denying that that's what happened, but this definitely has some shadiness that is being brought up by the defense attorney here. Doctor Who 8675309, wouldn't that be a Wayne Brady violation? No, Brady. That's from a case. That's case law that gave that the name. But anything that is exculpatory is supposed to be handed over to the defense. So, interesting. I'm wondering if there's going to be some kind of emotion that follows this testimony. I don't know. All right. Well, this could be scoring some good points.
Ever tell the armorer or her lawyers that a Good Samaritan came in after the verdict and gave you this information?
I do not know.
At the same time, I also understand this witness saying, look, I'm not a detective. I'm not an investigator. I collect the evidence. I gather the evidence. I document the evidence. That's my job. So I'm wondering if these same questions are going to be asked of other witnesses as well moving forward. We will see. And remember, in opening statements, the defense attorney, Alex Spiro, did indicate, he was like, now you'll notice that the actual lead investigator and like one or two other people that were like detectives on the case are not actually going to be testifying. That is important, or at least they're not expected to testify. That's important. And there is an important gap in this testimony. So that could be something that he would have asked of the lead investigator if they would be testifying. And so instead, he's probably going to end up asking like every single person that was involved with the evidence gathering about this issue, starting with her. It feels weird and clunky with her, but maybe he's going to end up asking every single one that had to do with the collection and gathering of the evidence, and the people who then made the determinations about where to go, what to do with the investigation itself. Just because, thanks so much for the super chat. Isn't it odd that a Good Samaritan would wait until Hannah was convicted, but before Alec was due to be on trial and went to CSU instead of Leo's? Yeah. That is strange. That is strange that someone would have done so after Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's trial also. I agree. And okay, fine. People are saying in the chat. We got to do it.
Don't be suspicious. 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 Don't be suspicious.
John Ralphio?
Alrighty, let's continue with the testimony.
But you do agree he did tell you that Seth said this was the evidence from the shooting, correct?
I don't recall what he stated, what someone else stated.
And you told him he didn't have to write a witness statement. Law enforcement was going to type up a report on it today, right?
I never stated any such thing about a witness statement.
He offered to provide a written witness statement so that it was clear. Did he not?
I do not recall that happening.
Okay. Did you give him assurances that you would type up a report on it?
I don't recall providing assurances to him.
Did you tell him that you would write up a report on it?
I don't recall doing that either.
Do you deny it?
No.
So when you testified earlier that you never found the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins, that wasn't true either, was it?
Can you rephrase the way you stated that?
Sure. As you sit here today, having had a Good Samaritan turn in these 45 rounds into the precinct, right?
If that's what you're discussing, yeah.
Yeah. You don't know whether or not you have in your possession the live rounds that killed Miss Hutchins, do you?
The live round that killed Miss Hutchins has been fired. Are you asking me about a connection between those live rounds and other ones?
I'm asking you, as we've talked about at great length, whether or not you withdraw it. I'm asking you, isn't it the case that law enforcement likely has the matching rounds to the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins?
I do not know.
And you do not know because you made a doc report about this and did not put it with the rest of the rust evidence, correct?
Those rounds were not placed with the rest of the rust evidence, correct?
Nor were they sent to the FBI for testing with the rust evidence, were they?
No, they were not.
Yikes. Yeah, that's maybe a problem for the prosecution.
I have no further questions for this witness.
I do wish that he had gotten there a little bit faster to really drive in what he's saying so that the jury actually catches what he's saying. Granted, I mean, this is after lunch now, so maybe they're refreshed and they're able to pay better attention, but yeah, the fact that they never sent these to off for any kind of testing is very convenient for the prosecution. How is Carrie Morrissey going to rehabilitate this witness now? We'll find out.
Redirect.
Ms. Poppell, are you a detective?
No, I am not.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in this case?
No, I did not.
You didn't interview Mr. Baldwin?
No,
You didn't interview Ms. Gutierrez?
no.
Mr. Spyro was asking you about the Good Samaritan who arrived at the sheriff's department after the Gutierrez trial. Can you tell the members of the jury when the Gutierrez trial was?
I don't recall exactly. I believe it was back in April.
February, March.
Would you take end of February, beginning of March?
Yes, that sounds more accurate.
Okay. Do you recall the Good Samaritan's name?
I do not.
Would you recognize it if I said it to you?
Yes.
Troy Teskey.
Yes, that was his name.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey is a close friend of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's father?
No, I did not know that.
Okay, so now we're going to get a little bit of a different picture of who this Good Samaritan is. So maybe it won't be so damaging like we thought it was going to be on cross-examination.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey had his own motivations for wanting to place blame on Seth Kinney to help Hannah Gutierrez?
Objection.
Speculation.
Objection. Irrelevant.
Objection.
Overruled,
calls for speculation.
overruled.
Please answer.
No, I had no knowledge of that.
I mean, I do admit the timing
Now,
of the Good Samaritan coming in
to be
is also
clear,
shady.
Is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for bringing live rounds on the movie set?
No.
No.
Is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for loading a live round into the gun?
No.
Has a person already been tried and convicted for those things?
Yes.
To try to clarify some points, Starline Brass, is that a brand of ammunition?
Yes, it is.
Is it a brand of ammunition or a casing?
It is a casing.
Okay. And the live rounds from the set of rust had nickel primers, right?
Yes.
Objection leading every question.
Overruled.
Okay.
So
She's getting a little leady here.
let me ask you this. When you went to PDQ to conduct your search, because you're not the detective, do you remember whether he had any surveillance video or not?
I don't remember.
So with regard to Mr. Kinney, prior to the search of PDQ, did Mr. Kinney actually bring his own live ammunition to the police station?
Yes.
So before you ever executed a search warrant, he went to the police station and said, I want to give you a sample of my live ammunition.
Yes.
And you took that and you sent it to the FBI, right?
Correct.
Now,
Really quick here. Jerry Roth, Legalbytes, isn't it leading for her to say, is it ammunition or a casing? Yeah. She definitely was saying, you gave me the wrong answer. Now this is the right answer. I'm giving it to you. And don't you agree with me? Which is, it is on redirect. The judge in this case is often very, very, a little bit more chill about leading on redirect. And that often is the case. Not every judge is like that, but they often let them get away with a little bit more there.
with regard to ammunition, characteristics of some of this ammunition is it says Starline brass on the top, right? And when I say it says Starline brass, describe to the jurors what the emblem is that we see.
It is a star, an arching line, and then another star.
The live ammunition that was taken from PDQ, was it all Starline brass?
No.
Was it all nickel primers?
No.
Now, in addition to the stamp on the top of the casing and the color of the primer, does ammunition have different shaped projectiles?
Yes.
And when we're talking about the projectile, we're talking about, what are we talking about?
We're talking about the nose of the bullet, so what actually gets projected out the barrel of the gun.
Hold on, please. I'm showing you what's been previously admitted. It's State's Exhibit 26. Remind us, which are the live rounds? The suspected live rounds, sorry, we'll get there.
The ones to the right,
And what are the ones on the left?
they are dummy rounds.
Is there a different shape to the tip of the projectile?
Yes.
Tell us what the difference is.
So the live rounds.
You can mark your screen.
Okay. So the live rounds have a flattened surface to them, whereas our dummy rounds come to a further point. Sorry, I was trying to draw a line. Almost like a curvature to a better point.
At my request, prior to the Gutierrez trial, did you take out a ruler and measure those?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall the size of what we call the meplet, which is that very top of the projectile? Do you recall the size of the live rounds?
Yes, the live rounds were 6 millimeters and the dummy rounds were 4 millimeters.
Every single live round, well, suspected live round, taken from the set of rust, was it a 6 millimeter meplet?
Yes.
All of the live ammunition that was taken from PDQ, to include the live ammunition that Seth Kinney brought into the sheriff's station, Did any of those have 6mm mechlets?
No.
Do you have any evidence that Seth Kinney is the source of the live rounds on Rust?
No.
If you know, is there evidence that Hannah Gutierrez brought the live rounds onto the set of Rust?
Yes.
What is that evidence? Let's talk about it.
The evidence that I am aware of is a photograph on a cell phone of the rounds in the background of a photograph that was taken with a cell phone. Those rounds are the same ones from the same box that were being pulled from that day that were handed to Lieutenant Benavides.
Let me see if I can find an exhibit to help us. States Exhibit 12. Go ahead, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and clear your screen, the marks. Is this the box you're referring to right here?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that Hannah Gutierrez admitted to bringing that box on the set?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that Hannah Gutierrez actually provided evidence to the sheriff's department that she was provided that box by her father?
Yes.
And the Good Samaritan who came in with the live rounds and was telling you Seth Kinney's the bad guy, that happened how long after the incident?
That happened well after the incident in after February, so March of this year.
So Ms. Hutchins died in what year?
In October of 2021.
And Mr. Teskey, Hannah Gutierrez's father's good friend, the Good Samaritan, he decided to bring this ammunition in after her conviction?
Objection.
Is that right?
Objection. Assumes facts, not evidence. Misleading.
Overruled, unless you want to come up and tell me.
Yes, I do.
All right, come on up.
Cool. For anybody that was asking questions about whether or not Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's conviction was going to be coming in, well, the jury has certainly heard it. Okay. But the witness actually even did talk about her testifying her testifying at Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's trial, and that the trial happened in February, March. And I think she also mentioned that she also was convicted.
Court reporter, would you read back the last question, please?
And Mr. Teskey, Hannah Gutierrez's father's good friend, the Good Samaritan, he decided to bring this ammunition in after her conviction. Is that right?
Go ahead and answer.
Yes.
That also answers why that ammunition was never tested, why that ammunition was never processed really, or anything like that. It's like that was at the earliest March, if not April of this year, when this incident happened in October 2021. So, yeah. Going into redirect, I was like, wow, how's Carrie Morrissey going to deal with this one? Well, she's dealing with it. That's for sure. It definitely has a very different picture on that whole situation. The fact that the Good Samaritan, who was unnamed in the cross-examination, actually happens to be the friend of her dad, Phil Reed, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's dad. And he brought it in after she was already convicted. I don't know. That's
In your experience, if Seth Kinney wanted to hide the fact that he had live ammunition at PDQ, he had plenty of time to get rid of it, right?
That's not a
Yes.
great question.
And you found some there, right?
Yes.
And the photograph, well, was all of the live ammunition in the same place?
Yes.
Where was it found?
It was in a box on the bottom of a stack labeled as live ammo.
And for completeness, was there live ammunition found in another room away from this box?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Did you find any ammunition that was not .45 caliber anywhere else at PDQ?
I believe there were 2 boxes of marked 38 caliber ammunition that were in another room.
Did Mr. Kinney tell you that his personal firearm's a .38?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been previously admitted as defendant's A23. Is this, so when we're talking about .45 caliber ammunition, well, let's back up. Is that the only caliber of live ammunition or suspected live ammunition found on the set of Rust?
Yes.
21, you said?
23, A23. So if you find 38 live ammunition, is that important to you?
No.
Because 38 is not .45, right?
Correct.
So the .45 caliber ammunition that you found at PDQ, is this where you found it?
Yes.
Any mistaking that that would be live ammunition?
No.
Why?
It was clearly marked as live ammunition in that box.
And let me ask you, Ms. Poppell, the ammunition that the Good Samaritan, Mr. Teskey, the close friend of Hannah Gutierrez's dad, when that ammunition that he brought to you after her conviction, you still have it?
Yes.
You can bring it in here and you can show it to the jury, right?
Yes.
And they can see for themselves that it does not match the live ammunition from the set of Rust, correct?
Yes.
And that is obvious just when you look at it, is it not?
Yes.
Do you know how many boxes of dummy ammunition were provided to the set of Rust by Seth Kinney?
If I recall correctly, just 1.
Do you know how many boxes of dummy ammunition were provided to the set by Hannah Gutierrez?
No, I do not.
Okay, fair enough. Now, you were asked some questions on cross-examination, and I think they were related to, let me get the exhibit just so that we know what we're talking about. You were asked some questions about the live ammunition in the other actor's gun belt. You remember those questions on cross?
Yes.
And I think the actor was Jensen Ackles.
Correct.
Do you know whether or not Jensen Ackles checked his firearm on the set of the movie?
No, I do not.
Whether he did his own safety checks?
I do not know.
she's asking that because I think that it's been reported that he made sure to check every single time. He's an example of someone on this very set who did something very different than what Alec Baldwin did. And so the defense tried to insinuate on this cross-examination with this witness that, this could have just as easily happened to Jensen Ackles as well. But here the prosecution is pointing out, no, this wouldn't have happened with Jensen Ackles because he did what he was supposed to do.
Let's talk briefly about, let me make sure I have the proper exhibit numbers for the record. I want to be clear, if you recall, I'm showing you defendants A27. Where did those dummy rounds come from?
These were the dummy rounds removed from the box with blue writing that stated dummy rounds.
And who do you know supplied those rounds?
Seth Kenny.
And I think I made a mistake on direct examination. This is State's Exhibit 30. Is that what I showed you?
Yes, I believe so.
And so those actually didn't come out of that box, did they?
Correct.
Do you know where they came from?
They came from a gun belt that was located inside of the prop truck.
Defendants A26. Is that where they came from?
Yes.
Based on the dummy rounds in both of these pictures, from the box and from the gun belt, do they have distinctive characteristics?
Yes.
Have they been identified? Who do you know who supplied all of the dummy rounds that were in the gun belt and in the box?
Yes, that was Seth Kenny.
All right. You were asked some questions about some documents that you photographed. Do you recall those questions? I'm trying to find them. Our counsel, are all of the exhibits still up here? Take that as a yes.
Oh, it wasn't. No, I have these. I have the script and shots.
Those are the exhibits? Does it say copy? Okay, can I use them then?
Yes,
Okay, as long as they're the same.
that is it.
Okay, we'll just use your copies. This is Defendant's Exhibit A10. You remember being shown this?
Yes.
Do you have any idea when this exhibit, or I'm sorry, when scene 125 was being filmed?
No, I do not.
Same question for scene, is it 55 or 66? I apologize.
No.
'68.
No.
115,
No,
118,
no,
121,
no,
130.
no,
In fact, if you know, was Ms. Hutchins killed during the filming of an actual scene?
no, she was not.
She was not. Is that right?
Correct.
Same thing here for 118 again. Ms. Hutchins wasn't killed during the filming of a scene, was she?
No, she was not.
Do you know, if you do you know who wrote the script?
No, I do not.
Do you know who the director of the movie was?
I believe that was Joel Sousa.
Do you know whether or not he's going to come in and testify?
No, I do not.
Did he testify in the Gutierrez trial?
I believe he did, yes.
Did you interview the person who wrote the script?
No,
Did you interview any of the witnesses in the room at the time of the shooting?
no, I did not.
So you haven't talked to a single person who could tell you whether these defense A3 and A10 are relevant at all. Is that right?
Correct.
You were asked by Mr. Spyro whether or not it was true that live ammunition should never be on a movie set, and you said that was correct. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You've never worked on a movie set before, have you?
No, I've not.
How do you know that?
Makes sense to me. Makes common sense.
But do you know?
No, I do not know the rules of movie sets.
You're not aware that there are safety bulletins for the use of live ammunition on movie sets?
No, I did not know that.
All total, including prop truck, the entire scene out there at Bonanza Creek, how many real firearms were taken into evidence?
If I can look at my report.
Sure.
I believe 13 in total.
13 real firearms.
Yes.
Now,
Really quick here. Jerry Roth, Legalbytes, doesn't the judge have to give the okay for witnesses to look at their report and not the counsel? I'm bringing this up now because it's very relevant to what we're watching. Yeah, the judge may have given an instruction before that she is allowed to refer to her report if she needs it for her recollection. You don't necessarily need to get explicit okay from the judge every single time. If you've already kind of gone through that and established that information.
you were asked some questions about Mr. Kinney being present at the search of the prop truck. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you remember why he was present?
I don't recall the details of why he was present.
Do you recall how the sheriff's department got access to the safe?
Yes, Seth Kenny provided us with the combination.
And the firearms that you recovered, real and fake, who did they belong to?
It was my understanding they belonged to Seth Kenny.
Would you say that those firearms were many thousands of dollars in value?
Yes.
And do you know who provided the vast majority of the blank ammunition?
That I do not know.
Okay. Does it surprise you that the person who owns the guns had access to the safe?
No.
Have you ever discovered any evidence that Seth Kenny was ever physically present on the set of Rust other than the day that he helped unlock the safe for your search?
No.
Do you recall you were asked some questions about you had information about a green ammo can? And that was one of the reasons that you executed the search warrant. You recall those questions?
Yes.
Do you remember where you got the information about the green ammo can?
I do not.
Did you review any of the photographs from any of the cell phone extractions that were done in this case?
No.
Did you look at any of the text messages between the different witnesses in this case?
No.
Do you have any information that Hannah Gutierrez previously asked if she could have live ammunition on the movie set she was working on with Nicolas Cage?
I do not have that information.
Okay. Now, I understand we've got some photographs of PDQ, and it looked like it was really packed full of stuff. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you called it a warehouse. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about how big that facility is?
It's a very small facility. It has an upfront office, a hallway that leads to a bathroom, and one small workshop room, and then a room towards the back.
Is it possible for you to estimate the square footage?
No, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay. It's a small building.
Yes.
Now, as a crime scene technician, are you trained to find pieces of evidence in difficult areas?
Yes.
Have you ever been in a person's home or apartment that kind of looked like a hoarder place?
Yes.
How many times do you think that's happened to you?
Several dozen.
Several dozen.
At least, yes.
And you're trained to look for evidence in that kind of an environment?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that Mr. Kenny's business is a prop house?
Yes.
Would you expect a prop house to be full of props?
Yes.
Was the prop house indeed full of movie props?
Yes.
Did anyone live there?
I don't believe so, no.
Do you have any idea, based on the investigation that you did, whether or not Mr. Baldwin cocked the gun when he wasn't supposed to?
I do not have any information based on
Yeah.
what I conducted.
She's
Because you didn't interview any of those witnesses,
the
right?
evidence gatherer.
Correct.
She's not a detective.
You were asked some questions, or at least one or two questions about your pretrial interview with the defense attorneys. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was Mr. Spiro even present at your pretrial interview?
I don't believe so, no.
I'm almost done. Let me just review my notes.
I have two, questions from the jury.
Okay.
There's a question from the jury. Interesting. Yeah, I forgot about that. The jury can ask questions in this case.
If you know the investigation into the source of the live rounds, did that investigation continue after the case was turned over to the district attorney's office?
I do not know.
As a crime scene technician, in your experience, do revolvers go off by themselves?
Objection?
Yeah.
701, 702.
She's not an expert.
Withdrawn.
Yeah, she's not an
Thank you.
expert.
That was stained.
That's what that
Um,
was about.
I want to just back up real quick. You were asked a question on cross-examination about specifically information that you had prior to putting in the request for the accidental discharge testing. You recall that question?
Yes.
And I think you testified that you didn't recall what information you received. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you were provided a document to refresh your memory. Do you recall that?
Yes.
May I approach?
Are you finished with that, Prof?
Yeah.
That demonstrative evidence.
Thank you, Judge. No problem. Thank you.
Ms. Poppell, have you had an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
How many pages is it?
It is 3 pages.
Does that document say anything about accidental discharge testing?
Objection.
That is that's a refresh of memory, so it doesn't have to.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to sustain his objection.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask this question and maybe let's see how it goes. Does it say anything about the gun being destroyed?
No. I'm sorry. No.
Did that document refresh your memory as to what you understood from the FBI about what the condition of the gun would be after the testing?
Yes.
It does.
Does refresh my memory. Yes. I'm sorry. Can you restate that?
Does that document, the question you were asked on cross-examination was about the information that,
Counsel,
okay.
I'm sorry to break you up, but let me give you these.
That's fine. I don't need to continue. Okay, so we've got a sidebar. Actually, I'm gonna bring her back on screen. This is much better with Indy being the majority of the screen here. while I fast forward through this sidebar. Oh my God, this auto zoom on StreamYard
A
is cracking me
fanny
up. Okay.
Ms. Poppell, was a fanny pack collected from the set of Rust?
Yes.
Do you know who the fanny pack belonged to?
Yes.
Who's that?
That was Hannah Gutierrez.
And was any of the live ammunition found in the fanny pack?
No.
So after
Cat FP, thanks so much for the super chat, by the way, with the indie cam just in time before she got out of the chair again.
Ms. Hutchins was shot, do you know whether or not the gun was unloaded by anyone on the set?
The information that was relayed to me was that the firearm was emptied by Hannah onto the cart.
Does that include the spent casing?
Yes.
Okay, I think got another sidebar. What's happening here? Are we gonna wrap this up
I'll
soon?
pass the witness.
Passing the witness. Okay.
I just have one question. The Good Samaritan asked you, in reference to the ammunition he provided, question, and that's the one that killed Helena. And you said yes, correct?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny it?
I don't deny it.
No further questions.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take our afternoon bathroom break. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court, and let's try to get back in around 3:20. Okay, thank you.
Order you leave your pads or your chairs. All rise for the jury.
Okay, so there is a break that's from about 15 minutes ago. So we probably have another 15 minutes of break here. Is there going to be any other
For the
statements?
rest of you. Recess for all intents and purposes for bathroom break for the rest of you.
Okay, so she's just going to do a sidebar with everybody else. Okay, so let's get this to live. And there we go. All right, we're going to pull this on the screen. And of course, like when we're bigger on the screen, all of the pets leave us. What's happening here? They are not fulfilling their pet duties very well today. Okay. So let's get some questions here while we wait for the next. We've got like another 5 minutes until they come back, probably. Maybe actually, yeah, about 5 minutes, I think. Okay. Justine Broker, Legalbytes they did a hearing before this on conversations with his wife. That was part of it. The defense was arguing that there were statements that she was making in some kind of a recording that should be like redacted somehow. They should be kept out because she's not the defendant here. Any sort of issues of confidentiality, however, if these are public statements that have been recorded, they're not confidential. So therefore, the whole like marital privilege that would normally attach to conversations between spouses, if they're not having that conversation when they have a reasonable expectation of privacy, then there's no immunity issue, or there's no privilege issue, I should say. But yes, that was an issue that they definitely touched on, was the Hilaria making some statements too. Sean McCutcheon, if Alec is found guilty, do you think the judge will hold him like she did with HGR? Do you think he will get treated differently? Well, the reason that the judge gave for Hannah Gutierrez-Reed going immediately to prison after her conviction, pending her sentencing, was because this involves a death. That was like the biggest reason that she said. And so if that's what happens here, she's probably going to say the same thing, to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Baldwin, but if you've been convicted of involuntary manslaughter and there's a death involved here, we're sending you now. So, yeah, I think he would be getting the same treatment. Lamau. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Thank you so much for the super chat. Did Indy leave to go join the jury? Yeah, she may have gone for the same bathroom break with the jury. No, she didn't go for a bathroom break. Actually, I think what she heard was Mr. Bites down the hall and decided to go and investigate and maybe hang out with him for a little bit. We'll see. Okay. Iglo Pop, straight to jail right away. It's true.
Right to jail, right away.
Exactly. That may be, in fact, what the judge tells Alec Baldwin here if he is convicted.
Right to jail, right away.
Okay. More questions here. English bottle cap. Is he becoming as inept as the HDR defense attorney at presenting an argument? I don't know. I still think he's doing a better job. He's doing a much better job, partly because he's actually able to like use exhibits, show exhibits, even on cross-examination. That was one of the most frustrating things about Bowles was the fact that like there were 100% exhibits and you know, photos and body cam footage and all kinds of stuff that he could have used during his cross-examination that would have been helpful for him to make his point, because he ended up like describing these things a lot, and it just like it's you know, it's one of those times when you need to show, not tell. And I mean, at one point he tried to like refresh one witness's recollection by like bringing his phone forward to play something. Like I've never seen anything like that before in any kind of a trial. So I do still think that even though Alex Spiro is not as smooth as I was hoping him to be, not as crisp as I was hoping him to be on these cross examinations, yeah, it's still a lot better than Bowles in my opinion. English bottle cap question: was this witness on the stand at the HDR trial? She was. She also testified. English bottle cap also question: why would live rounds have a flatter tip? I don't know. I actually cannot answer that question for you. I know a bit about firearms. I'm far from a firearms expert, however. Page Elizabeth 11. Sorry, I don't watch the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, or didn't watch the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial. Is the assertion that she purposely loaded guns with live ammo? No, because that would have been a homicide charge as opposed to involuntary manslaughter. She actually was charged with the same crime as Alec Baldwin, involuntary manslaughter, and you can get there either with recklessness or with criminal negligence. So, and that's how she ended up being convicted. So, yeah, there was nothing intentional that was alleged in that trial either. Pamela C. Legalbytes question: can you please explain what a plea deal is, or is it different from person to person? Yeah. So, a plea deal, generally speaking, is if you're familiar with a settlement in a civil case, you can kind of compare it to that in a sense. In a civil case, that's where my experience really is. A lot of settlements in civil litigation, where you have one side brings claims against another side, and at some point along the line, usually in civil cases, there is a settlement that happens because both sides do their own kind of calculation of like, okay, this is what could happen if we go to trial. This is how much it would cost. This is what it would cost my life, my sanity, my my relationships with my family and friends. Like, there are a lot of costs that go into litigation, even the ones that are non-monetary costs that a lot of people don't necessarily realize until they go through it themselves. And so that is, so anyway, so when you have a civil settlement, you've got both sides are settling on a certain amount. Defense says, okay, I'll pay you a certain amount. It's less than what you're asking for. Prosecution says, okay, I'll accept a certain amount to walk away. With a plea deal, there's a similar sort of a situation where the prosecution has charged the defendant with a crime. They've, and there's a certain number of years that they are looking at in prison or fines or all kinds of things. And the prosecution may say, look, if you agree to plead guilty, we will give you a deal, because that means that the state doesn't have to go through the whole rigmarole of a full trial and all of the expenses that go along with that, and state resources for the court and all that kind of stuff. It's, it's essentially like, in a sense, it's still a cost saving function, but the prosecution ends up getting justice served from their perspective, and the defense probably is going to walk away with a lighter sentence than they would have gotten if they went all the way to trial and lost. So, let's see here. There we go. Or we'll do it this way, since we're still waiting. It's still a muted feed. Okay. So the actual plea deal that someone is offered definitely depends on the evidence. It depends on the circumstances for sure. It might be that they get a sentence barely reduced, or it might be that they get a serious reduction on the defense, because the prosecution is like, just please don't make us go through trial with this. But we still want to get you for something. All right. LK Ryden, Legalbytes question: if you are given a flamethrower and tells you it's not connected to an outlet, and then you're supposed to point it at someone, would you check the outlet and keep your finger off the trigger? That's basically the question that, I mean, not the question, but that's very similar to the question that the jury has to figure out here. Personally, if it's me, yeah, I would double check. I would say, how do you know that this is not plugged in, or how do you know that there's no gas in the tank to actually throw this flame? And can you show me to make sure that I feel safe? That's me. I'm a very cautious person. Not all people are all that cautious, but should they be? I think so, personally. But that's me having the perspective of someone who's a bit more cautious. The Lucian, Legalbytes question: can jury not normally ask questions during testimony? Typically, I mean, my experience in most jurisdictions is, most places don't allow the jury to ask questions. Here, New Mexico is the first place that I actually observed a trial where they do. I do know that, what was that civil case? Taking Care of Maya. It was that case. They also allowed jury questions. I think it's in Florida, right? They also allowed questions during that trial as well. I didn't cover that, but I remembered hearing about it. In the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, there was like one or two questions that were asked by the jury. And so sorry, excuse me. I've got to remember to breathe when I'm talking for such a long time. So the judge is still going to talk to the attorneys ahead of time and determine whether or not it's a question that can properly be asked and then answered and whatnot. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting that they have allowed the jury here to have a bit more of an active role in the trial, which is so fascinating. Also, it gives a good a little bit of a window into what the jury is thinking, which is always such a mystery throughout trial. Janae Doherty, Legalbytes: how likely is the jury to be following any of this? Fighting between counsel, how long this has taken. I know I'd have a hard time paying attention. I would too. I would too. But granted, when you are sitting in the courtroom, juries do tend to pay better attention than when, you've got a lot of distractions going on around you also. But that was a very, very long cross-examination. Daniel Nagy, Legalbytes: I don't think it's StreamYard, but rather Apple's center stage feature. Do I remember that correctly, that it's an iPad? It is an iPad, but I will say it only started doing that auto zoom feature on the IndyCam when I was required to when I was required to like install the StreamYard app and start using that. When it was in a browser, it never did that. So I don't know. ZND fifth question, side picture from Alita's pregnancy tummy so we can all see when the time is near. Yeah, I haven't actually taken very many photos of the belly this whole time, but I probably should, especially at this point when I'm starting to get a little bit big and round. Definitely feeling a bit like a whale these days, and looking forward to the stage where we get to, starting to look like a small planet. We're getting there soon. Okay. All right.
This day calls Alessandro Pietta. Will you raise your right hand?
Face the judge, please.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I would.
All right. Have a seat. Talk into the microphone.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may. Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Alessandro Pietta. I come from Italy. I am a gun manufacturer. I'm actually the guy that made the gun that been used in the movie.
Thank you.
I love this. You guys know, I mean, if you've been watching for a while, you guys know I love accents. And that was one of my favorite things in the Karen Reed trial, was all the awesome Boston accents. I love the fact that we have Alessandro Pietta, which is just great. I studied abroad in Italy, by the way, when I was in college. So I have a soft spot for the Italians personally. We've got some Italian friends also. So anyhow, he's the guy that supplied the firearm to Seth Kenny and PDQ Prop. So he's probably going to be testifying all about how this firearm was in perfect working condition. So anyhow, apologies to all of the Italians everywhere if I start using a terrible version of an Italian accent, but I'm just totally jazzed by this.
Sorry.
You have to answer her.
Oh, sorry.
I appreciate all the
Sorry,
information, but I have to ask you a question and then you answer the question.
Sorry.
All right. So you've told us you're a gun manufacturer.
Yes,
is that
I
right? And what company do you own?
It's named Fab Fratelli Pietta.
Okay. And do you manufacture Pietta firearms?
Yes, that's the name of the company in English.
How long have you been manufacturing firearms?
The company has been founded in 1963 from our lab, and my brother and myself are running the company since 2000.
And are you familiar with how Pietta firearms are actually made?
Yes, of course.
And how are you familiar?
I've been working in the company since 1995, and I've been taught by my dad how to produce a gun and assist my brother studying engineering in demo.
Does Pietta Firearms have quality control measures and inspections of their firearms?
Yes, we do.
And what are those?
We start from raw material, and then we check all the machining part, and then we got our quality control on the assembly department, and of course before shipping the gun to the customer. So we got several steps in our procedure line.
And does Pietta Firearms use, what kind of manufacturing technology does Pietta Firearms use?
Well, we've been involved a lot in the Industrial 4.0. That means that we are using the most actual manufacturing technology available on the market.
So you're basically high-tech technology?
Yeah, we use CNC machine, full control of robotic system. It's not just by hand, but also use the modern technology.
Okay. So, excuse me, what does Pietta Firearms do to ensure that a gun that leaves Pietta Firearms doesn't have any defects? And Mr. Pietta, if I can just have you pull the microphone a little closer and then speak a little slower.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the jury might have some trouble with your accent and how quickly you are speaking, sir. That was very endearing.
And then if you could just speak a little slower, please.
Sure. We do have our quality control operation, but being an Italian manufacturer, by law, we had to send the gun to a national proof house. It's not a private company, but it's a public company. And all the guns that we produce, all the guns that are imported or made in Italy, need to be tested by this proof house. They have their own standard quality controls, and they also give us a certificate, and they stamp on the gun their marks. So there are different systems that we use to check the guns.
What is a proof house?
A proof house is a public company that shoot the gun, test the gun, take certain dimension. We have CIP homologations that is different from the American. It's called SAMI, but they're very similar in the concept. We have certain dimension and did be checked in order to be sure that the gun works properly. They also shoot the gun higher pressure, so they know that the gun will not blow up during your regular training section. And of course, they check all the safeties on the guns.
So before the gun leaves your company, Pietta Firearms, do you guys do checks of the guns first?
We do our own final check for quality reports. That mean that we also looking for aesthetical defects. And of course, we do our own quality on the trigger pull or on the action to be sure that everything in proper situation.
And so in addition to that, then it goes to the proof house and they do their checks as well?
The proof house check the gun as a piece of steel, if you pass that name. I check the gun for the customer because they want to get a nice gun, so without any scratches or without any cosmetical defects.
Does that also involve checking the internal parts of the gun to make sure that there are no defects?
That's done before by our quality control office, and we do that in the company.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 50.
No objection.
Your Honor, being that there is no objection, I would move into Evidence States Exhibit 50 and ask to have it published. On the screen in front of you, Mr. Pietta, is States Exhibit 50. Do you recognize that?
Yeah,
What
it's
is
one
it?
of our single action revolver. Probably, actually, it's written 45 long Colt. That's the caliber, 7.5 barrel length.
Are you familiar with this particular gun?
I know this gun because I know that gun has been produced for a trade show called SHOT Show, and has been shipped to Vegas in particular for that show.
Were you involved in the manufacture of this particular gun?
I was personally involved producing this sample for that trade show.
Okay. And do you recall when this gun was manufactured?
I guess 2016 or 2017.
Okay. How do you manufacture this particular firearm?
Well, I would not say manufacturer. I could say I prepare this gun because being a replica, we need to make our customer happy. And of course, our main customers are collectors. So when we prepare a new sample or a new model, we study the books. So we study the American history and we look for details just to make a new model. That's why I've been involved to introduce this gun during this trade show.
So you said this was a single action revolver.
This is a single action type revolver. It means that every time you want to shoot, you need to pull the hammer, cock the hammer, and pull the trigger.
Is that what a single action means?
Yes.
So you have to cock the hammer before you pull the trigger?
Yes.
Okay. Is this different from other Pietta single action revolvers?
It's different on outside because the details are different. We are not used to make any marks on the grip, or we are not used to write the caliber on the trigger guard. But this is basically is the same gun with a different configuration.
So are the internal components of this gun the same as for others,
Yes,
Pietta?
correct.
Are the internal components of this particular gun, are they interchangeable with other Pietta single action revolvers?
Yes, they do.
Now, is the hammer to this Exhibit 50 that we see in front of us, is that different from other Pietta revolver hammers?
As the sides of the hammer and being polished just to create a different color.
But is it similar in as far as specifications?
It's the same.
It's the same to other firearms? I'm going to show you what's been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 6. If I can have the deputy bring it up and ask you to put on some gloves.
Sure.
So you can.
Yeah. Go. No, I don't.
He has it.
Oh,
right.
good. Thank you. Sure.
I just realized I never started the poll, so I'm about to correct that.
If you can open the box, Mr. Pietta. Do you recognize what's in there?
Yeah, it seems to be the same gun that's on the screen.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 51.
No objection.
I move into evidence 51, Your Honor, with no objection.
Case 51 is submitted. You may publish.
Now, if you can take a look at that firearm Exhibit 6 that's in front of you, does it have a serial number?
Yes, it is.
And I'm going to put on the screen State's Exhibit 51. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, that's our invoice that probably has been used to ship the gun to EMF.
Does this invoice contain or list this particular gun that's in front of you, Exhibit 6?
Can I check the serial number?
Yes, please.
Can I touch the gun?
Yes, with your gloves.
Okay. Yeah, it's the same serial number.
Okay. Did Pietta Firearms then ship this gun, Exhibit 6, per this invoice?
Yes, we did.
And when and to whom was it shipped?
Has been shipped to EMF company. That is one of our customer that show with us during SHOT Show. So to get the gun inside United States, we need to get someone to get all the license to import the gun for us. That's why this sample has been shipped to EMF.
Okay. What kind of a company is EMF?
EMF is an importing company, and they sell to distributor, dealers, and to individuals.
Is EMF associated with Pietta Firearms?
Yes, it is.
How?
We, Alberto and myself, own EMF.
So you own EMF?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And so when did you ship this particular firearm that's in front of you to EMF?
It's written on the invoice, 27 November 2017.
So that's when it left Italy to go to EMF?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me go back to ask you a question about this hammer. You had said that it's nickel plated because this was for a particular.
No, it's not nickel plated, it's just polished.
Oh, polished, I'm sorry. Does that change its functionality?
No.
Okay. Did this particular gun go to the proof house?
Absolutely.
And was it approved by the proof house?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
And how can you tell?
Well, there are some marks on the frame. And it's clearly on the top of the serial number. So you can see them. There's also another proof mark on the cylinder. So they're easy to understand that this gun has been proved by the proof house.
And what does that mean to you as a gun manufacturer that's been approved by the proof house?
That we have produced a good gun, follow the CIP regulation, and the gun can be sold to anyone. Without that marks, we cannot sell or produce or export any guns.
Now, once it comes to the United States, do you know if your guns or these guns that you import are also subjected to testing by American agencies?
No, actually, all the guns that want to be imported in United States need to be approved by ATF first. So when we start producing this single action revolver, we send a sample or few samples to ATF agent and they approve the gun for us.
Do you know what ATF does in
Yeah.
order to approve the guns?
Mostly they have a schedule and with details, so they need to check if our guns, actually a gun, match their requests. And also they call drop test that is used to see if the gun is safe enough to avoid any kind of malfunction.
You said a drop test. What do
Yeah.
you understand that to be?
Drop test means that the gun has
Actually, what he said was a drop test. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Couldn't resist. Let me go back 5 seconds.
What do
Yeah.
you understand that to be?
Drop test means that the gun has to be approved. They have a safety, and in this particular gun, the safety is on the cylinder, and they put the safety on. They put a primer, not a light brown, of course, a dummy. They put the hammer in the first notch, so the firing pin is lined with the primer, and they take a weight, let it drop at 8 or 4 feet, something like that, 5 times. And the gun, the system should not shoot. If that is okay, they approve the gun.
And so does your Pietta firearm revolvers get put through that test by ATF?
Absolutely.
And that's to test to make sure it doesn't fire on its own?
No, that test means that we have safety on the gun.
Are you familiar with how this particular gun fires?
What that mean?
Well, what does it take to
You need to
make
pull,
it
you
shoot?
need to cock the hammer and pull the trigger.
Do you know this gun that you have in front of you will fire without a pull of the trigger?
Actually, this gun cannot fire because from what I see is missing some parts. So,
Okay, I'm talking about when it was first
oh, sure, of
manufactured.
course.
Before the FBI got their hands on it.
Does it fire? Would it fire without a pull of the trigger?
No,
Why not?
because the mechanic, the design of the hammer and the trigger has been designed since Samuel Colt made this gun to work in that way.
And can you explain under what circumstances it will only fire?
Well, when you cock the hammer, the trigger will engage the firing knock position. That is the farthest one, so the last position of the hammer. And if you want to release the hammer, you need to pull the trigger. The trigger is just a sear that locks the hammer in that position. And if you want to do that, you need to pull the trigger.
Okay. Now, is there also a manufacturer's warning about whether or not the firing pin should be sitting on a primer?
Well, actually, it's not just a manufacturer, it's a standard rule between shooter when you carry your gun, in this particular gun, to load just only 5 ammo and not 6.
Why is that?
For safety reason. So you will know that you will not, if eventually the gun falls down, nothing happens.
What could happen if the gun falls down and the primer's...
Most of the time, nothing, because the hammer is against the frame. And so if you hit the round, the primer will not shoot the primer. So it's just a safety rule that has been taught to every kind of shooter. So I've been a shooter for myself, and that's what they told me to do. So load 5 rounds on the cylinder instead of 6.
And will it fire? Let's say you load 6. And what could happen if you load 6?
Nothing really, just need to know that you load 6 rounds instead of 5.
Okay, but if you have the firing pin on the 6th round?
If the firing pin is in the rest position when the hammer is down the frame, so the firing pin is not against the primer, nothing happens, because if you want to shoot the primer, you need to apply a certain quantity of force to shoot it. So you can get a thick touch on the primer, but the gun will not shoot.
If the firing pin is actually on the primer?
Close to.
Okay, but you had said that if the firing pin is on the primer and you drop the gun, what could happen?
Usually, it's based on the primer technology. The powder in the primer is not at the top of the primer, it's just a little in the middle. So you need to press it a little more. And when you reach that point, you can shoot the load under the firing pin.
So what I'm hearing you say, it sounds like the only way you can fire this gun is by pulling the trigger?
That's the way that should be done.
Is there another way to
No.
fire this gun?
No.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Really quick, John O'Rourke, thanks so much for the super chat. So this gentleman wasn't
Let
involved.
me ask you, what condition was...
Sorry. And we'll go back 5 seconds. So this gentleman wasn't involved when the firearm was broken. Proofing is important and tested to be fair. As far back as 300 years, Italian firearms have been proofed. So yeah, he was not involved when this was when the firearm actually was broken. He was involved in the all of the stuff related to this firearm before it ever reached the rust set even. Sandy, also, thank you so much for this super chat. Legalbytes is on the road to 250K subscribers. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Thank you so much for that, Sandy. We are still inching our way towards 250,000 subscribers. So if you are enjoying the content and you haven't yet subscribed, definitely subscribe. We would love to hit 250K during this trial. And otherwise, if you haven't done so already, there are over 400 people watching now. Well over 400 people watching. If you haven't done so already, please do hit the like button. It really does help to push this out to the algorithm, ether on YouTube, so that more people can join us for this. Yeah, thank you. And thank you again, Sandy.
Let me ask you, what condition was this gun in when you shipped it, when Pietta shipped it to EMF?
As I said before, this gun is being produced for a trade show. So we ship the gun without the firing pin. That is mandatory for this trade show, that all the guns are saved. And doing that, there are inspectors that check all the guns for us and put a tag. So the consumer, the customers, will know that they cannot use the gun to shoot to anybody.
So not having a firing pin in that gun while it was used in trade shows, does that alter it or change it in any way?
Well, you are missing one part, that's it.
But does it change any internal components of it?
No.
Now, did Pietta Firearms own EMF while during the time EMF owned this gun?
Yeah.
To your knowledge, did EMF do anything to this gun?
No.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a couple more questions, Mr. Pietta. When Pietta Firearms shipped this to the United States, to EMF, did it send the firing pins with it?
I don't remember, really. Sorry.
How hard is it to install a firing pin?
Pretty easy. It's just a pin and that's it.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions, but the other lawyers will.
Thank you.
The other lawyers. All right, cross-exam.
Good afternoon, Mr. Pietta.
Good afternoon.
Just have a couple of questions for you. We'll be out of here quickly. We heard you say that you personally made this gun. Is that right?
Yeah.
And it was shipped from your company, Pietta, in 2017?
Yeah, that's what is written on the invoice.
Between 2017 and October 2021, you don't know how this gun was handled by any particular individuals. Is that correct?
No, I have no idea.
Your knowledge of the gun's functionality was limited to November of 2017 when it was shipped from your company. Is that fair?
That's not correct, because my knowledge about this gun was also during this trade show that's been held in January. So probably the last time I saw the gun was in January.
So roughly beginning of 2018. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And so you don't know what condition the gun was in on October 21st, 2021, when it was being used on the Rust set by Mr. Baldwin. Is that correct?
Correct.
And before
Fair.
the gun was sent to the FBI for testing in 2022, you were not asked to inspect the gun. Is that right?
Correct.
And in fact, the Santa Fe sheriff didn't ask you any questions about the gun at that time.
No.
Isn't that right?
Correct.
Or at any time,
I never see anyone except today.
even though you personally made it. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
That
And
is
so the first time that you had seen the gun since about early 2018 was about 2 months ago. Isn't that right?
I saw the picture of the gun during a preview interview that we got on Zoom, in a Zoom meeting.
Someone held up a picture of the gun on a Zoom meeting,
Yeah, this picture probably.
and that was the first time since 2017 you had seen the gun. Yes.
Well, of course, I got this picture on my computer, but I never recalled that was the one that was sent to everybody else.
And at that point, the gun was already broken. Correct, sir?
It's the first time I see the gun, I may say yes.
Great. Thank you. No further questions.
No, you're right.
all right. That's it. That's it for this witness. For Alessandro Pietta. Who is next?
Who's your next witness?
Your Honor, the state calls Justin Neal.
All right. First, I thought she was going to say Justin Bieber. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. But before he goes up, we are going to get some questions here. And also, sorry, let me just do this really quick here. Okay. Thank you for that, Draco Amy. So I can quickly replace that pinned chat. Okay. Alrighty, some questions here. Doctor Who 8675309 question: how many Ferraris do you own? Has nothing to do with the case. Just wondering, how many Ferraris do you own? That would be a very nice question. Howie K, Legalbytes, do we know how many witnesses the prosecution and defense are calling? I hope this isn't another lally fest. It's somewhere around 50 something total. So that's like way less. And the majority of them are state witnesses, which makes sense. That's very often the case. English bottle cap question: are the subtitles or the witness generated by AI or a human, and can the jury also read the subtitles? Jury doesn't see this court feed, so they don't see any kind of a court feed with any kind of subtitles or anything. It is the subtitles, I'm pretty sure, are AI generated. I don't think there's a human that's actually like typing out these subtitles. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why there's often a lot of errors that are kind of comical with it. Hannah Floyd, Legalbytes, what does Stephen Baldwin have in his ear? I honestly was wondering the same thing. I have no idea. It is kind of weird. It looks like he's got some kind of like headphones on. I don't know if he's hard of hearing. I don't know. I really don't know all that much about Stephen Baldwin, other than I think he's Hailey Bieber's dad, right? I think so. And therefore Justin Bieber's father-in-law. Tara Umbra Vamp Writer, sorry, I've been at work and catching up. Is AB claiming that the gun was defective and he didn't fire it? That is, he claims that he didn't pull the trigger. So he claims he didn't pull the trigger. He pulled the hammer back, but he didn't pull the trigger. And so, you know, he thought that he was being, excuse me, he thought that he was being, you know, safe and reasonable and all that kind of good stuff. But you know, so this is one of the reasons why they are bringing in experts and manufacturers and all kinds of people to basically testify that no, that gun would not have fired but for someone pulling the trigger. Even if it was at just a tiny amount of pressure, he had to have pulled the trigger. That's what the prosecution is saying. Blue Tuna Tiger One. Can we have a poll on favorite Italian cheese? Well, I do want to keep the current poll though. I wish we could run multiple polls at once. Um, but that's a good question though. And let's see here. I think that's all the questions. All right, let's get to it.
Just raise your right hand, please, sir.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat, tuck into the microphone.
Did they get the gun?
Yes.
Okay, I need it.
He's probably going to be an expert
Thank you.
witness
May I proceed, Your Honor?
on the gun.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Yeah, my name is Justin Neal.
And sir, how are you employed?
I own my own marketing firm.
And what kind of work do you do? What kind of marketing work?
My marketing firm is a very stereotypical ad agency, and we have another leg to our company where we recruit and manage sales reps for our clients,
What kind of clients do you have?
primarily outdoors.
And are you affiliated with Pietta Firearms?
Yes.
How?
Pietta's a little bit more robust than the other clients I have. I essentially handle North America for them as it pertains to sales and marketing. And I also handle EMF, which they are part of, as their sales and marketing person.
What is EMF?
Early Modern Firearms is an importer, and it's based out of Santa Ana, California. They have been in business for 65 plus years, and very much back in the day, they used to supply a lot of firearms, Pietta and otherwise, to Hollywood.
Who owns EMF at this time?
Alessandro and Alberto Pietta.
And how long have they owned EMF?
I believe 2017.
And what exactly is it that you do for EMF?
I handle, again, the sales of the guns that they have of Pietta's. EMF only imports and distributes meaning sells to retailers, Pietta firearms. So I handle the sales of Pietta firearms through EMF through distribution.
Are you required to have a federal firearms license?
I am.
And why is that?
I am an RP on the FFL for EMF. There has to be two responsible parties, and the Pietta family or the Piettas entrusted in me to be one of the RPs on that FFL.
And RP is what?
Responsible party.
And what does the responsible party do?
The responsible party is responsible for the distribution, the importing of the firearms and all the paperwork thereof.
So as the responsible party for EMF, are you also required to be aware of what transactions take place, what firearms are sold by EMF?
Yes.
Are you familiar with how EMF maintains its records of sales?
Yes.
In September of 2021, do you recall a transaction between EMF and a company called PDQ Arms and Prop?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you recall that?
I recall that because I saw the actual sales record or the shipping invoice and the packing slip.
I'm going to show you, well, let me ask you this. How did PDQ contact you, or how is it that you guys learned that PDQ needed to purchase arms?
Yeah, they contacted EMF.
Okay. And what was the request for?
The request was for firearms that he saw on the website. EMF obviously has a website, and he wanted some revolvers. And at that time, 2021 was the heart of the pandemic, and Pietta and every manufacturer, gun manufacturer, was back ordered. So we didn't have any. The lady in which he talked to initially said, we do have display guns that we show at trade shows. And so we didn't offer, we said we had those guns.
Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 52.
Mhm.
No objection.
Your Honor, the state would move into evidence 52.
It's 52 is admitted and made published.
I'm going to show you, well, before you is State's Exhibit 52. Do you recognize that?
I recognize it, yes.
What is it?
It is a Pietta single action revolver.
And how do you recognize that is a Pietta single action revolver?
Because that was a display gun that we had at some of the trade shows in which I attended and I monitored.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 6 and ask you to put on some gloves and take a look at that gun.
Okay.
Oh no. Uh-oh. I don't know if you guys can see me or hear me, but everything is frozen for me. I don't know why I'm getting this spinny wheel of death right now. Oh, don't tell me that I need to like restart my entire computer. You guys can see me and you can hear me. Okay. But for some reason, the court feed is frozen. And I'm getting the spinny wheel of death on literally everything. I'm trying to click on things and it is this. So there's something up with my computer. Ugh, I don't want to have to restart everything. Oh, this is so frustrating. Okay. I can't switch feeds because I can't click on anything. I can't even click on a new tab. I am probably going to have to restart my computer. I'm really sorry, guys. Please bear with me. I'm going to disappear for a second. The IndyCam will still be here. I will be back as soon as possible. If I can even do, oh, I'm going to have to force quit. Blah. Okay. See you guys in a minute. All right, we're back. Good Lord, thank you so much, you guys, for being for sticking with me here while I deal with that. And the sound is terrible. Give me a second. That has to be fixed. Yep, it's because it took me out of that. I don't know what just happened here. Okay, that should be much better. Okay. All right. Give me 1 second here as well. All right. Okay. Yeah, all kinds of weird stuff just happened. That should not be happening. Okay. All right. So, and I managed to find the feed, which I think is about the spot where we left off. I apologize, you guys. Really, really do. Okay, let's get back to it.
I'm going to show you, well, before you is State's Exhibit 52. Do you recognize that?
I recognize it, yes.
What is it?
It is a Pietta single action revolver.
And how do you recognize that is a Pietta single action revolver?
Because that was a display gun that we had at some of the trade shows in which I attended and I monitored.
I'm going to show you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 6 and ask you to put on some gloves and take a look at that gun.
Okay.
You can hear every little stretch of that of that
Yes,
latex.
please. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 6?
Yes,
What is it?
it is the same gun that's shown on the screen, the Pietta single action revolver.
So it's the same gun as depicted on 52? State's Exhibit 52?
Yes,
And tell me, was this one of the guns that was sold to PDQ?
yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as stated. Keep that in front of you because I may ask you some additional questions. If you can just close the box, but I will ask you some additional questions. Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 53.
No objection.
We'd move into evidence State's Exhibit 53.
States 53 is admitted.
Mr. Neal, do you recognize what's in front of you as State's Exhibit 53?
Yes,
What is it?
it is a shipping report, and that is shipping invoice
From whom to whom?
from EMF to PDQ.
And when was that?
Also, really quick before we get into that, I totally missed this because of the computer issue. John O'Rourke, thank you for gifting 5 Legalbytes memberships. So kind and generous of you. I don't see who was gifted those in the chat. I usually like to read those out so that people can hear if they, because a lot of times people don't necessarily watch the chat when this happens, and so hearing their account name on the screen helps them to know like who gifted it to them. But unfortunately, it's not showing up. I hope it did in fact work out, but John O'Rourke, either way, thank you so much. Very kind and generous of you.
It was in 21, order date 9/29/21.
Okay. So on September 29, 2021, were these firearms that are listed on this invoice shipped to PDQ?
Yes,
And is Exhibit 6 that's in front of you one of those firearms that's on this invoice?
yes.
Which one is it? You can actually touch the screen and it'll mark.
Oh, well, okay. I'd have to see the serial number.
Okay, so
On the
if you want
gun?
to look at the serial number of the gun in Exhibit 6. Actually, if you want to open it and you can check the serial number.
Yeah, it's right here.
Is it not making a mark? It might be your
It's
gloves.
it's the third one. I've got gloves on.
Okay,
It's the third one.
so,
E52277.
this one right here?
Yes,
So, the number 3, the third gun on the invoice is Exhibit 6.
yes.
Now, let me ask you, when did you become affiliated with EMF?
2018.
And do you recall approximately, was it beginning, mid, end of 2018?
And
And when you became affiliated with EMF, did EMF already have Exhibit 6 in its inventory?
yes,
And did this gun, Exhibit 6, remain with EMF from the time that you were with them until September 29, 2021?
yes.
And what did EMF use Exhibit 6, this particular gun, for?
To display at primarily industry trade shows, business to business shows, B2B shows.
So it was owned by the company the entire time?
Yes,
Did EMF do any work on this gun?
no,
Did EMF inspect it for quality assurance purposes?
before each show, functionality, it wasn't, they didn't take apart the gun or anything, just to make sure it functioned properly. And then they would put it in what we call a sock, which is basically a soft case.
And when you say functionality, what
Really quick, sorry about that. There's a question here. Jan Brun Anderson, what is this all supposed to prove that the revolver was not smuggled illegally into the country? Well, it's a chain of custody issue. So what they are doing is they're talking about the quality of this gun. No funny business happened to this gun from the manufacturing all the way through when it arrived on set. So in other words, like, you know, this gun had existed for a number of years, but it was with EMF for a long time. You know, with this guy, he says nothing ever happened to it. We didn't do anything to it. Then it was shipped over to PDQ. I assume they're going to be asking Seth Kenny about, you know, you guys didn't do anything to this gun, right? You didn't change anything to it other than adding the firing pin, because that was what Mr. Pietta testified about, which was the fact that that he said that the gun lacked a firing pin because it was just a show gun. Yeah, so basically that's what this is all supposed to prove. It might seem a little bit boring at times because there's nothing crazy going on, but that's kind of the point here, is to say this is all super routine and everything worked and functioned in the way that it was supposed to.
What does that mean?
That the gun works properly, not firing it, never fired, just the 4 traditional click of a Colt firearm, and the trigger worked properly.
And at any point during 2018 to September of 2021, was there any indication that this gun malfunctioned or had any defects?
No,
What condition was it in when it was sold to PDQ on September 29, 2021?
it was in perfect condition as far as I know.
You said that how often was this gun checked for functionality while it was owned by EMF?
We do approximately 5 shows a year, and so at least 5 times.
And you say 5 shows, does that mean, is it in a display case? Or?
It is in a locked glass display case.
So people can't just come and grab it?
They can't grab it, no.
Do you also, well, let me ask you this before we move on to the next topic. When this gun was shipped to PDQ, do you know what it was shipped in?
Yeah, EMF follows standard operating procedures, which they do for any gun shipped, whether it's to a dealer, a big box store, distributor, influencer. It is in Pietta makes and supplies EMF with a very hard styrofoam box that's molded for single action. And it's placed in there, then a cover over the top of it that's fit to it, and then another cardboard box sleeve that slides over the top of that, sealed, and then it is put into another shipping box with whatever other guns or accessories the attended person or store requests.
Would that have been the manner in which it would have been shipped to PDQ?
Yes.
Do you also handle customer service calls for Pietta guns in the United States?
I handle quite a bit of the customer service calls, yes. Not all, but a lot.
Approximately how many would you say?
Over the years, since 2018, I probably on average handle 5 or 6 a month.
Okay. Have you ever received a complaint or a call about a Pietta revolver going off by itself?
Never.
Are you familiar with how this particular gun fires?
Am I familiar with how it fires?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
He has to sell it after all.
Does it fire without a pull of the trigger?
No.
May I have a moment here?
Yes, I'm here, Councilor French.
Mr. Neal, if this particular gun, Exhibit 6, if it had displayed any defects in functionality, would it have still been shown at trade shows?
No.
Why not?
The purpose of Pietta or EMF going to a trade show is to sell firearms to FFL dealers, holders, not the public, but sporting goods stores, if you will. And if a buyer who wanted to specifically see this gun or any other was to hold it under our watchful eye, of course, and it was defective, he would probably not buy that gun or any other gun that we have.
So would it be fair to say you put the best of the best that Pietta has to offer?
Absolutely.
May I have a moment now? Does the court want this one?
You guys are having issues with the sound? Because on my end it sounds okay. I'm wondering if it's my internet or my distribution. Ugh. Unless you're talking about like him breathing into the mic. Let me know what you guys are hearing. Okay, sounds okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. I have no further questions.
Hey,
Thank you.
Cross-exam.
We have no questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Oh, no
Thank you. You're
cross-exam.
excused, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Next witness.
Give me just a minute. We're just a little out of order.
Okay, so we can fast forward a little bit here.
No. The state calls Corporal Alexandria Hancock.
Okay. She's the one that's been sitting at the prosecution's table.
Face the judge and raise your right hand, please.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Have a seat.
Just state your name for the record, even though I know it's repetitive.
Alexandria Hancock.
And how are you currently employed?
I am a corporal with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department?
It will be 7 years in November.
And how did you become involved with this case?
In 2021, I was a detective with the Sheriff's Office. I was assigned to the Violent Crimes Division. On that day, we had received a call for a shooting at a movie set on the Bonanza Creek Ranch.
And you said you were on duty, and I'm sorry if I didn't hear you. What were you at the time? Were you a corporal?
No, I was a detective.
And did you show up to the scene there at Bonanza Creek Ranch?
Yes.
Do you know approximately what time?
I believe it was between 2:30 and 3 p.m.
And so can you kind of give the ladies and gentlemen of the jury an idea of what was going on? Were you the only detective on scene? Were there other detectives? What was happening?
Yeah, so when we had originally, it's called a briefing, essentially, back at our office, at the sheriff's office, we had a short briefing with all the detectives that were there that day about what had been learned thus far as to what occurred on the ranch. And so during, or I should say after that briefing, the detectives were assigned at that point on who would be handling and who would be assisting. And then from there, the entire team of us went out to the ranch.
So approximately how many people were in the team?
I want to say maybe 5 or 6 of us.
And how does the sheriff's department traditionally, is one detective named primary, or are there more than one? How does that work?
Just one is primary.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so people are saying that that there's crackling on the feed. I don't hear a crackling, so it must be the StreamYard feed outward. And I wonder if it's on me as well right now. Give me 1 second. Okay, no, I think it's probably just the court feed then. Okay, interesting. That's so strange because for me it sounds clear. I don't hear any crackling.
And then typically they will have a secondary just depending on the case.
And how did it work out with this case?
Originally with this case, a different detective, his name's Joel Cano, was assigned the primary detective, and then I was assigned secondary.
And just so that we're clear, at some point, did you become primary?
Yes.
And at what point was that?
Probably at least a couple weeks later.
Okay. Now, in that interim, in those 2 weeks, were you actively working on the case?
Yeah, I was assisting with it.
And as the assisting detective, did you conduct interviews with witnesses on October 21st?
Yes, I did.
Who did you interview on that day? And then we'll back up.
Okay. On that day, I interviewed Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, David Halls, and Alec Baldwin.
So I want to be clear. You, as the assisting detective, interviewed all 3 of the people that were ultimately criminally charged.
Yes.
So if you were interviewing all of those, what I'm going to call sort of main players, what was the primary Detective Cano doing?
He was, on the day of the incident, he was interviewing the numerous people that needed to be interviewed back at the ranch.
And give us an idea of who those folks were.
That Detective Cano interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
They were people that were said to be inside the church at the time of the incident, or members that assisted with the armor.
Why was it necessary to have two detectives doing interviews at the same time?
Because of how many people were involved.
Okay. And have you continued to be the primary investigator with the Sheriff's Department on this case since 2 weeks after the incident?
Yes.
Now, when you were dispatched, well, it sounds like you weren't really dispatched, were you?
No.
Who called you in?
My lieutenant at the time, which was Mike Martinez.
And you indicated that you had a briefing.
Yes.
And tell us kind of what information you got at the briefing that you had before you went out to the scene.
Yeah, so during our briefing there at the office, we were told that there was a movie being filmed at Bonanza Creek Ranch, and then sometime during that day, shortly after we were called in or shortly before we were called in for that briefing, that 2 people had been shot on the set.
Let me refresh my feed because folks are still hearing the crackling. I don't hear it. It could be a StreamYard issue. I apologize, guys. It's going to be just a couple minutes. I'm going to refresh. I'll be right back. And we're back. Okay, let's share the screen. Okay. Let me know if there is an issue with this or if it's fine.
Did you receive information that the shooting had been characterized as an accident?
I do recall reading that on our CAD.
And as a detective with the Sheriff's Department, when you get called to a shooting that's being characterized as an accident, does that mean to you that there will be no criminal charges?
No.
Have you been dispatched or involved in accident investigations in the past that turned into criminal cases?
Yes.
So I just want to be clear. I know that the jury's heard some of this. So you interviewed Hannah Gutierrez, correct?
That's correct.
And what role did she have on the set?
She was the armorer, the main armorer on Rust.
And you also indicated that you interviewed someone named David Halls. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall what his role was on the set?
He was the assistant director.
And then, of course, you interviewed Mr. Baldwin, and we understand that he's an actor, correct?
Correct.
I want to just take you back for a moment. During opening, did you hear the defense attorney say that Sarah Zachary was not interviewed on October 21st?
I did hear that.
Is that correct?
No.
Was Sarah Zachary actually interviewed on October 21st?
She was.
Who interviewed her?
Detective Joel Cano with the assistance of Detective Ray Arndt.
And who was Sarah Zachary?
She was the props master for Rust.
If you would try to explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the relationship between the prop master and the armorer based on your understanding.
What I understood between the prop master and the armorer, as it pertains to Rust, is that they're technically 2 different departments. They have different functions, different roles, do different things. But in the case of Rust, the prop master and the armorer assisted each other because of how what they would describe to be prop heavy this movie was.
And did you get an understanding of when we say prop, exactly what we're talking about?
Yes.
So one of these gun holsters, would that be a prop?
Yes.
Would the guns themselves be props?
Yes.
Even the live gun, the real guns, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
And the ammunition, would that be considered a prop?
Yes.
Okay. And does that also include glasses and cups and plates and silverware?
Yeah, anything that an actor would use in a scene, excluding like wardrobe items.
Okay. And I understand that you indicated that Ms. Zachary was interviewed on the 21st of October by Detective Cano. Did you also conduct a follow-up interview with Sarah Zachary at a later date?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall approximately when that was?
I believe it was sometime in November.
So just the following month?
Yes.
And you testified that you conducted an interview with Hannah Gutierrez on October 21st. Did you also conduct a follow-up interview with her at a later date?
Yes, I did.
And approximately when was that, if you recall?
I want to say that was in November as well.
And you interviewed Mr. Baldwin on the 21st, correct?
Yes.
And did you have subsequent contact with Mr. Baldwin after the interview that you did on October 21st?
Yes, I did.
And how were you having contact with him? Was he in New Mexico, or how was that happening?
No, he wasn't in New Mexico at that point, but I would receive phone calls and sometimes text messages.
From Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
Generally speaking, was it Mr. Baldwin reaching out to you or you reaching out to him?
Baldwin.
It was him reaching out to me.
So he had your cell phone number?
Yes, my department cell.
And just to be clear, do the defense attorneys also have your contact information?
They do.
Have they sent you text messages?
I don't know exactly her title, but members from their team, yes.
Okay, so they actually have your cell phone number?
Yes.
And you've made yourself available to them?
That's correct.
And you do that whether I'm there or not, right?
Yes.
This is one of the things that Alec Baldwin did that was a huge mistake in this case, which was acting like the police that were investigating the case were like investigating the case in order to exonerate him. Anytime you are anywhere involved in any kind of a criminal case, you have to assume that the police are going to set their sights on you, target you. And so he would like actively call them. I remember seeing some of the video of some of these conversations where he was just calling them and like seemingly trying to like control the narrative with the police, but just so many statements, so many things that he just he was incredibly active, overly active in this case. It was, yes, not a good look. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just don't talk to the cops. Don't do it.
With regard to your November interview with Ms. Gutierrez, did you have a conversation with Ms. Gutierrez about who loaded the gun?
I did.
And what did Ms. Gutierrez say?
That she loaded the gun herself.
And did you have a conversation with Ms. Gutierrez concerning the box of ammunition that was holding that one suspected live round?
I did.
And what did Ms. Gutierrez say?
That it would be a box that she would have provided.
Objection, hearsay, unless this is information accurate.
So my response, unless you want us to approach, is that these are statements against interest and they come in under that exception.
don't believe that they are, but like I said, if it's information acted upon, and we can cross on it, it's fine.
All right, go ahead.
Did you have conversations? Well, let me ask you. Ms. Gutierrez indicated that she brought that box of ammunition on the set. Is that right?
That it was similar to one that she would have provided.
During that interview, did she produce a photograph for you?
She did.
And the photograph that she produced, did she tell you where she got it?
I don't know if she said in that interview exactly where she got it, but she did describe it to be a box like that was in the photo would be what she provided.
And the photograph that she showed you during the interview, did it match exactly the label on the box that contained the live ammunition?
Yes.
As you sit here today, do you have any question about who introduced the live ammunition to the set of Rust?
No.
Who do you believe it was based on your investigation?
Hannah.
That was another person in this whole case who was talking way too much with the police, volunteering way too much information. And she spewed so much about, bringing not bringing live rounds, but bringing rounds on set and bringing this and bringing that. And yeah, I don't particularly love relying on a witness like this for, an ultimate conclusion as to who brought the live rounds on set, because especially after, I mean, that was an issue in the last trial, but that wasn't one of the ultimate conclusions that was decided on by the jury.
Do you have conversations with Ms. Gutierrez about her firearms training?
The one that she conducted?
Yes,
or her own experience?
No.
Objection, hearsay.
I think we should approach.
Okay.
You will not want to?
Go ahead. Come on up.
Okay, we are going to fast forward, time travel.
You conducted an interview with Mr. Baldwin, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you learn during that interview whether or not Mr. Baldwin received any training regarding the use of these firearms?
Yeah, he had mentioned that he did a training session shortly after with, he said Hannah, which was the armorer, and then I believe he said Sarah and their assistant Nicole was there.
Okay. And did you interview Seth Kinney?
Yes, several times.
How many times do you think you talked to him?
I don't know if I could. I'm not sure I could put a number on it. I don't know, probably at least between 5 and 10.
Okay. And was Mr. Kinney cooperative with you?
Yes.
Did you request any search warrants in this case?
Yes.
What search warrants were requested?
I had drafted the search warrant for the prop truck as well as the search warrant for PDQ.
And PDQ, is that Mr. Kinney's business?
Yes.
Let me ask you, have you ever worked on a movie set before?
No.
And have you ever investigated a crime on a movie set before?
No.
On October 21st, 2021, did you know what a prop truck was?
No.
At some point through your investigation, did you learn what a prop truck was?
Yes.
And what's a prop truck?
It was an area that was used for storage.
Storage of?
This particular prop truck?
Yeah.
It was actually multiple departments that were using it. I don't know exactly which ones, but the armorer and the props department had approximately half of like the back of the truck.
And I think we heard previous testimony from Ms. Poppell that the search of the prop truck didn't happen until the 27th of October, I think.
Yes.
Is that right? What was the delay?
Well, I was not the case agent at that time, and so I really wasn't the one in charge of the investigation.
You know why, though?
And so what happens with your case agent is they kind of develop the flow and decide what's needed based on the information that they have and what we need to get.
What was one of the first things that you did when you became the primary on this case?
Started reviewing a lot of information.
How long after you became primary did you request a warrant for the prop truck?
Well, I wasn't the primary at the time that I requested that warrant. I was assisting.
Okay.
And so, I mean, between the day that the incident occurred, which was the 21st, and then the day that the search warrant was, I think, applied and executed for was the 27th, so 6 days.
I'm a little bit confused about what she's trying to say in terms of this explanation for the delay, because there was a 6-day delay. She says that she wasn't the lead detective on the case yet. That happened about 2 weeks after the incident. She said she became the lead, but she was working on it before then as the secondary detective. And her reasoning for the delay was, well, I didn't really know because the person who makes those kind of decisions is the lead detective. And then she says, well, I issued the search warrant on the 27th or what have you, whenever around then. And you know, but I wasn't the lead detective. I don't understand what her explanations are. It feels like she's trying to dance around stuff. Like, why not say it didn't seem urgent yet, or I don't know, something along those lines. I'm just confused by her reasoning here.
And was the prop truck secured during that time?
Through my interviews, I found out that it was secured.
And how was it secured?
So the set, one of the individuals that worked on the set of Rust.
Objection, you're set. You're distracted. She knew it at the time.
This is information that she learned during her investigation.
But afterwards, it has nothing to do with.
Ask her when did you get that date?
In terms of when she learned?
Yes.
When did you learn? Let me ask you this. When you showed up on the 27th of October, did anyone meet you at the prop truck?
Beth Kenny.
Yes, and then we also had deputies that went out there at least a couple days before we had drafted that search warrant to secure the truck with 24-hour surveillance.
So when you went to the prop truck on the 27th, did someone have to meet you there to open it?
Yes.
Who had to meet you there to open it?
Her name was Ro Walters.
Okay. So on that day, did you understand that it was locked?
Yeah, inaccessible.
Okay, because she had to open it for you.
Correct.
And other than props generally, tell us what other things were stored inside that truck.
There was a firearm safe with firearms in it. There were firearms outside of that safe. I think there were like a bunch of chairs in it and maybe some like shade tents and stuff like that. There was quite a bit of stuff.
After you were let into the prop truck and it was unlocked for you, describe for us the safe. How big is it?
Maybe about 4 feet tall and maybe about a foot wide.
And did someone have to come and unlock that safe for you?
Yes.
Who was that?
Seth Kenny.
And when you executed the warrant on the prop truck, as it relates to this case, just summarize for us what you found. We don't care about tables and chairs and stuff.
Additional firearms, more ammunition. I think that was kind of the major things that we got off of it.
And are you familiar with the ammunition that was provided to the set of Rust by Seth Kenny?
Yes.
Where was that ammunition found?
Inside of the prop truck in a bag.
And when you say in a bag, was it inside something else?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Was it just loose in a bag?
Well, it was inside of a box that was inside a duffel bag type thing.
Okay. And is it also, did you locate a black gun belt?
I don't think I was the one that located that.
Okay, all right, no problem. And we understand that you also executed a search warrant on PDQ, is that right?
That's correct.
And that was on November 30th, I think we heard?
Yes.
So prior to executing that search warrant, had Seth Kenny talked to you about live rounds?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you recall, did Seth Kenny at some point bring live rounds to you?
He did.
Do you know whether that was before you searched PDQ?
It was before.
So you knew before you searched PDQ that he had live rounds because he took them and told you?
Yes.
Did you receive information prior to the search at PDQ regarding a green ammo can?
I did.
Who did you receive that information from?
From Thel Reed, which was Hannah's father.
In part, was it based on the information from Hannah's father that you executed the search warrant on PDQ?
Yeah, the information I learned from him was some of what I used.
And just to be clear, I want to be clear, the reason that you went and searched PDQ, one of the reasons is because Mr. Reed said, Seth Kenny's got live ammunition, right?
Yeah, he did say that. He actually said that he was the one that picked up that live ammunition.
Who was?
Thel.
Thel picked it up?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Corporal, did it occur to you that Thel Reed may be giving you inaccurate information to protect his daughter? What?
I mean, unless we're going to be able to ask witnesses.
Well, continue.
I'm just asking you, I'm not asking about anybody else. Did it occur to you when you took the information from Mr. Reed and got the search warrant, did you know who to believe at that point in time?
No.
Okay. And I want to be clear, did Mr. Reed, and this is just why you did what you did Mr. Reed indicate to you that the ammunition at PDQ he thought was the same ammunition on the set of Rust?
Yes.
Did that turn out to be true?
No.
even though, well, let me ask you this, the live ammunition that was collected from PDQ, did it just visibly look dissimilar to the live ammunition from Rust?
Yes.
Even though it looked dissimilar, did you send it to the FBI for testing anyway?
We did.
Did you ever discover any evidence throughout your entire investigation that Seth Kinney supplied live rounds to the set of Rust?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Seth Kinney was present on the set of Rust until you met him at the prop truck?
No.
During your investigation, did you ever discover any evidence that Mr. Kinney modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Ms. Gutierrez modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever formally arrest Ms. Gutierrez?
No.
Does that have anything to do with whether or not she was ultimately convicted of a crime?
No.
Did you ever arrest Dave Halls?
No.
Do you know whether or not he was convicted of a crime at some point?
Yes, he was.
And the fact that you arrested him or didn't arrest him, did that have anything to do with it?
No.
Does as a law enforcement officer, do you always arrest people who then later are criminally charged?
Sorry, you mean like arrest them right away? And
Do they have to be arrested in order to be criminally charged?
No.
Why would you not arrest someone?
To develop the investigation, if we're still waiting or investigating facts, trying to find information, and to get potential suspects or witnesses, whoever is involved, to cooperate with law enforcement.
Who makes the final charging decision in a criminal case?
The district attorney's office, essentially.
The prosecutor does, right?
Yes.
You guys don't. The law enforcement officers don't, correct?
Right.
Now, in addition to searching the prop truck and searching PDQ, did you also ask to search cell phones?
I did.
And whose cell phones did you search or ask to be searched?
I requested searches of Alec Baldwin's cell phone, Hannah Gutierrez's, David Hall's, and Sarah Zachary.
Did you review all of those cell phone extractions?
I did.
And when you review the cell phone extraction, what do you get to see? Do you get to see text messages?
I do.
Do you get to see photographs?
Yes.
When you reviewed the photographs from Ms. Gutierrez's cell phone, did you notice anything that stood out to you?
I did.
What was that?
There was a photograph taken, I believe it was maybe end of November, that she was, there was two bullets, 2 rounds, in I believe her hand. It caused a little bit of concern. And then I think I actually had found a couple photos of it. And one of the bullets in that photograph was circled, kind of how you can edit a picture. and it said, I believe it was dud on top of it.
That bullet that was circled that said dud on it, was it a Starline brass casing?
It was.
Did it have a nickel primer?
Yes. Well, silver.
Silver, nickel,
Yeah.
okay. Just in terms of the color.
Yes.
And in terms of the projectile shape, did it match the live rounds from the set of rest?
It did.
All right, counsel, we're gonna stop for the day.
Okay.
Jury, I want you to, instead of 8:30, I want you to be here at 9:30 downstairs. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else
Okay.
about the evidence received here in
Later
court.
start tomorrow.
Thank you.
All rise to the jury.
So she said the jury is, usually she's been telling the jury to arrive at 8:30. She just told the jury to arrive at 9:30 tomorrow. So that means maybe it'll start at 9:30 or 9:30, 9:45, maybe 10.
All right, we're not dismissed for the day. Not dismissed for the day. While I'm taking a break, I want you all to get your exhibits ready over here. Everything. Okay. Lock up for the day. I'll be back at 10. Okay? Okay, please.
I'm wondering if she's going to, it sounds like she's going to have a conversation with them about some of the exhibits here. Okay, let's see.
Oh, I can't see.
Okay, so there is something going on here. Let's just make sure.
I don't think I'm gonna have much of a response. I can probably just do it orally.
Okay, fine.
Because I've now figured out what we're dealing with.
All right. So, I told the jury to come back at 9:30. I want to be on time when they get here. So I want you all to get settled and be prepared to have the case called and begin to argue the motion at 8:45.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And when you're finished with that, send it to me as well.
Okay.
Not just defense at 7:30 PM or whatever.
Oh, yes, sir.
Mhm.
Just a couple housekeeping issues, or at least one is, can there just be instruction that the witness who's under oath cannot be spoken to by prosecutors?
Yes.
No problem.
Go.
Here
Oh, I
she
can't
is.
see you. Okay.
I can't imagine she wants to speak
Yes.
to me, but.
You're under oath. Don't talk to any witnesses. All right. Anything else?
Not this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're in recess.
All right. Okay, so they will be arriving at 8:45, or they will have a motions hearing at 8:45. If they have that on camera tomorrow, we'll go live. Why not? Okay. Did we already get this one? I don't think that we did. John O'Rourke, thanks for the super chat. I'm digging the defense attorney's face. I'm not agreeing, but it does mean something in court to the jury. Carrie is stretching everyone in the courtroom today. Long day. It is a long day. I do agree with that. And the testimony at the end of the day felt a little bit dry. So, yeah. Sue B, what is PDQ? I don't know what it stands for, but that is that's the prop and arm company that Seth Kenny owns and which provided all of the props for the Rust production set. Danny Phillips, question. Did we ever hear the jury question? No, we didn't. So, I mean, either I misheard the judge or something on that. I don't think I did, but maybe I did. Or the judge read the question and decided that it wasn't something that was going to be able to be answered or something like that. Jitsev, yes, maybe a dumb question, but does the defense always sit on the right? The defense sits farthest from the jury, except for when there's like weird things going on in the courtroom, like the Karen Reed trial was super crammed. So they had the defense actually sitting behind the prosecution. Very, very strange. But typically the prosecution sits closer to the jury, defense sits a little bit further away. And sometimes the jury will be on the right side of the courtroom or on the left side of the courtroom. It depends on the courtroom. Sue B, how long did it take for the crime scene to talk to her? You know, we haven't heard anything about the crime scene talking to anyone in this case. So I don't think it was a proper investigation. They didn't have a full-on seance. Right.
A-list actor Alec Baldwin.
We've got the next video that is playing here. Okay, we're going to get rid of that. Alrighty. Pamela C, Legalbytes, question. I'm confused. The prosecutor sounds like she's trying Hannah Gutierrez-Reed all over again, not Alec. Yeah, I don't know how helpful that's going to be for the prosecution. I mean, unless the point that they decide to make is she was responsible and so was he, and she was tried and convicted and sentenced, and so should he. So I don't know, that may be where she's going with it, but it could backfire because the jury may be like, well, they already held the person responsible. So, what are we doing here? There always could be a reaction like that. Doctor Who, 8675309. What is the motions hearing about tomorrow? Excuse me. Sorry. The motions hearing tomorrow, I don't know exactly what it's going to be on, but it's going to be some sort of an evidentiary hearing that I'm fairly certain about, because that was the explanation for the longer lunch break today, was because they needed some time in order to make some arguments about different video evidence to come in and cutting things out and all kinds of stuff, making redactions. So I imagine that tomorrow is going to be a bit more of that. So if you guys want to join for that, if it is televised in the morning, it seems like maybe they will televise it, then join me at 8:45 a.m. Mountain Time. English bottle cap question. What is your take on what happened in this session? Do you mean for day 2 generally, or with this particular witness? If it's with this particular witness, felt a little bit dull, I suppose, maybe, but her testimony certainly hasn't ended. I don't think it's really gotten started yet, to be completely honest with you. I think that she's probably going to be on there for a while, and they're going to be admitting some of these interviews, videos through this witness, because she was the one that actually conducted the interviews. She seems like the best person to bring that kind of evidence in through. So I don't think that we've really gotten to the meat of her testimony just yet. So yeah, I think it's still to come. All righty. Hezzo one, thanks so much for this. 8:45 a.m. Mountain Time, 10:45 a.m. Eastern Time for tomorrow's stream. Thank you very much for that, for the clarification there. All right, we are going to end the poll now. It's a much smaller poll because I completely forgot to start it until I don't know how many hours into it, but halfway through day 2, how do you lean regarding Baldwin's involuntary manslaughter charge? And this was with 406 votes. 51% said need more information. 24% said guilty. 23% said not guilty. So interesting with that split. We'll see. We'll continue to monitor and see how that continues to develop. It's going to be very, very interesting to see that continue on. All right. I think that's about it. We also will have a recap coming out. I still have to finish reviewing it. So if there's nothing to change to it, then that should be coming out today. I know it's a little late in the day. It's the end of day 2 now. But then we also will be getting working on day 2 recap as well. Hopefully we can get that one out faster. I know I always say that. I was saying that all throughout the Karen Reed trial, but these recaps do take a bit of time because of we're condensing all of the information down into a much smaller slice of time, but also trying to keep it as complete as possible. So keep an eye out for the recaps for sure. And in the meantime, thank you everybody for joining me, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. See you guys.